Hello and welcome, everyone. Very excited to have all of you here for this conversation on coaching certification. Many of you did submit questions in advance, and I appreciate those of you that made those questions easy to answer. That's great. Actually, most of them, I think we're going to do a good job of covering the information, and of course, we'll add additional pieces so that we make sure we answer what was submitted. Also want to let you know that throughout the conversation, you are absolutely welcome to do two different things. One is if you want to raise your hand and come on live, you can ask a question live. Every once in a while, we get somebody who likes to do that. And then, of course, you can also type one in the question panel. We'll monitor that throughout the conversation so that we make sure all of your questions are getting answered as best possible. This really is about giving you a chance to explore and get the information. And because of the fact that you're doing that, I just want to say I was in the same boat as you. Years ago when I first started looking at coaching and coach training and certification, I actually invested 6 months in checking out different programs. And so I get how important this is. We've all been there and we've all been through that. So we want to make sure we do that. And because you're here, I want to give you something. So at the end of the conversation today, I've got that for you. First off, let's take a peek at what our agenda is for the conversation today. So we're going to start out with defining coaching. What exactly is it? How does it work? And then we will move into industry statistics and insights. That is speaking to many of you who asked questions ahead of time in terms of, hey, how do I know and what are the opportunities, etc. We will also discuss the Staircase to Success coaching model, which is a great way of explaining how that coaching relationship works. And then we will look at the coaching process itself. We're going to talk pros and cons of certification. So of course it'd be great to say, oh, it's all pros. Well, let's be realistic. We know there are cons too. So let's talk about it. And then we're going to look at reasons people choose certification with the Center for Coaching Certification. We will talk about what to look for in a training program wherever you go. We will discuss opportunities with coaching, and then we will give you a good solid overview of the Center for Coaching Certification programs. So diving in. This definition, by the way, comes from the International Coach Federation. A few of you had questions about them, so I'm going to make sure we answer those and build on what information we have to give you that information. I do want to start with reading through this because the language in this definition is incredibly insightful in terms of what coaching really is. It's so often misunderstood. So exploring this. It is a strategic partnership. Now this is significant because what often happens is when you hire a professional, that professional is the expert. They're the ones who have the subject matter knowledge, etc. And so they're giving you that information. Well, in coaching, it's very different because the individual client really is their own best expert. And so the role of the coach is to be a partner with them as they develop their opportunities and their action plans. It goes on to say that the coach empowers the client, empowers them, puts them in charge. And the client is the one who clarifies their goals, creates their action plans, moves past obstacles, and achieves what the client chooses. Very, very significant. So that language, it's exciting. What coaching is and does is amazing. It's a powerful tool. So International Coach Federation, who are they? What are they? It's a nonprofit, so it's a professional membership organization. People that join are coaching professionals. In terms of the coaching profession, this is the gold standard. So think about it this way. Every profession, as it grows, starts developing, okay, what are the standards? How does this work? And if you really dig back, Hundreds of years ago, you didn't go to medical school if you wanted to be a doctor. You just said, hey, I'm a doctor, and you started being a doctor. Well, that's different now. Of course you go to medical school. Attorneys go to law school. HR professionals have standards through SHRM and HRCI. Every profession, as it grows and develops, starts having standards. And that's where coaching is at. So while there isn't any government regulation right now, we do have self-regulation. And the International Coach Federation is at the forefront of that. There are a number of other organizations. They all work together, which is the good news. And that's where we're at in terms of the coaching. So in addition to being there for us and a networking opportunity, they also are where we get our code of ethics from. And members of the International Coach Federation are accountable to that code of ethics. They have standards. They approve training programs. A couple of you were asking, okay, how do I know if this training program is credible? If it's approved by the International Coach Federation, that's the main thing you want to look at. That does give you about 300-400 options. There are a lot of different programs out there, so there's still more to look at. Membership in the International Coach Federation calls for 60 hours of training. So that's before you can even join as a coach member. In addition to the 60 hours to join as a member, they have credentialing. Think about it this way. If you're going to call yourself a coach, at a minimum, it's a membership in the International Coach Federation. That's like saying, okay, I got my degree. And then think about credentialing as if you're getting a master's or a doctorate level degree. It's above and beyond. Several of you had questions on how that credentialing works, so let's talk about it. There are 3 different levels of credentialing. For the purposes of keeping it simple, I'm going to explain the first level. In addition to the 60 hours of training that you have to have, there are 3 other requirements. One of them is that you must have 100 hours of coaching experience, and that 100 hours must begin after your coach training. So from the day you start coach training, you can start counting your coaching hours. Sometimes we have people that have been coaching for years without any training, and those hours don't count. So that's an important thing to know. Of the 100 hours, at least 75 of them must be paid, whether it's in a job or individual clients that are paying you, and you must have at least 8 different clients. So they have specific criteria around what they accept in terms of coaching hours. So that's your second requirement. The third thing that they require for the credential, and I'm talking the ACC credential, is that you must have 10 hours of mentor coaching. And there are very specific parameters around the mentor coaching in terms of what's addressed during the mentor coaching sessions, how much time, the length of time, etc. And then your fourth requirement, once you have the first 3, you can submit an application, and then they'll send you a link to take a test. And the test is 155 questions. You're given 3 hours to complete it. And when you successfully pass that, that's when you earn that ACC credential. So hopefully I'm answering all those questions on that credentialing process. If you have additional follow-up questions, feel free, raise your hand, type them in, whatever you want. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep us moving forward. So we said we'll look at some statistics, insights in terms of what's going on with coaching. So Right Management, a big company, a lot of you have heard about it, said 86% of companies use coaching to sharpen the skills of individuals targeted as future leaders. And again, it makes a sense. It's a powerful tool. Denison Consulting calls it the organizational development tool of choice for leaders and emerging leaders. So really exciting in terms of what's going on. Ray Williams tells us coaching is the second fastest growing profession in the world. First is information technology. And Fortune magazine, so there's tons of information out there on coaching. When they published this particular article, it's very apparent. They looked at a number of the different research studies on coaching. So when big companies spend big money on coaching services, they want to know, hey, is it worth their investment? What's the return on that investment? And so a number of research studies out there give those numbers. And on average, according to Fortune magazine, it's about 6 times the cost of the coaching. So 600% return on investment. I think about the implication of that. That's profound, because bottom line, when you get a return of 600%, how can you afford not to have coaching? And that's one of the key reasons that coaching is growing so much. Companies either have coaching programs or they're starting to develop them and moving in that direction. So super exciting in that regard. Now, when a company does hire a coach, what are the reasons that they hire a coach? So 48% of the time, according to Harvard Business Review, it is to develop high potentials or facilitate transitions. So leaders in moving into a new role or organizational transitions, and they're working with the leaders throughout the company. So this makes a lot of sense. And then 26% of the time it's to act as a sounding board. So when you think about top level executives in a corporation, this is brilliant, because bottom line, when they have a coach, it gives them an opportunity to think out loud, and it gives them someone who's going to challenge their thinking and expand their thinking. And that in turn develops them as a leader and supports what they're doing in the organization. And as you start putting these numbers together, it's all in keeping with what we heard from, for example, Right Management. Then 12% of the time, coaches are hired to address a derailing behavior. And here's the bottom line on that one. If you're going to have a coach, it's an investment. And when you have a coach, it's because they want to keep that person. They're really good at their work, at the job. There's simply something getting in the way of them maximizing their effectiveness, their potential. And so bringing in a coach is going to support their success and in turn the company's success. Now, a fascinating detail came out of this study by Harvard Business Review, and that is that 76% of the time, personal issues get addressed. So many times when we talk with people in training, they're saying, well, this is about the job. We're not supposed to talk about those personal things. And the reality is, whatever's going on for that individual, it affects them on the job. It affects their focus. It affects their energy level, etc. So when they have the opportunity to address some of those things through the coaching relationship, it means that when they are at work, they're really there and they are accomplishing more. So this makes sense. Now, on an individual basis, why do individuals hire a coach? So you have companies hiring coaches and then people themselves. International Coach Federation tells us that one of the primary reasons for an individual to hire a coach is their career. And when you dig into this, it makes a lot of sense. You see, bottom line, a lot of people are graduating from college and they're going, okay, now what am I going to do? How am I going to be successful? And the generation going through this stage, this phase, is aware of coaching and aware of the benefits of coaching. On top of that, when you have people mid-career that are changing career fields or they want to advance their career wherever they're at, it's a powerful tool for them in support of that. The next reason is business management. And again, this makes a lot of sense. When you have somebody who owns a small to a mid-sized business, they're really good at the product, at the service that they do. And then a coach supports them in terms of how they manage their business, how they're growing their business, how they're interacting with their people and their customers, etc. So it's a great tool. Self-esteem is the third reason, and sometimes people are surprised about that. And then when you think about it, it's like, well, that totally makes sense. What's the number one barrier for most of us? It's ourselves. And, hey, can I really do this? Our confidence in that. And it makes a huge difference in terms of what people really accomplish. And then work-life balance. We've been hearing that buzzword for a long time, and it's even more true now than ever before. We're doing more with less, and people really value having a sense of, yeah, I really have a life and enjoy it, etc. So working with the coach supports that. Okay, so those are reasons. You saw one statistic earlier as well from Fortune magazine in terms of the ROI. I'm going to give you one of the studies that I'm guessing they looked at, and it's the most commonly cited, Manchester Inc. And then you also have another one, by the way, from Metrics Global. Those two, when you research this, are the ones that pop up the most often. Big studies, and they give you the explanation of how they measure that return on investment. And I do get people ask that question as well. You know, how do you measure it? Sometimes it really is a quantitative number. You can look at a change in turnover costs and how much money that costs the company. And if a leader is keeping their talent instead of losing their talent, it's making a bottom line impact. Productivity numbers, sales numbers, etc. So there are a lot of numbers you can look at. Of course, what's tough is measuring some of the qualitative data, because when people have a coach and it changes their ability to effectively interact with other people, how do you measure that? And at the same time, we know the impact is profound, because when they have a coach and they're more effective interacting with other people, it makes a difference in engagement and productivity in the workplace. It's simply tougher to measure. So they talk about how they measure that. And again, the number is exciting, that average of 600% return on investment. Now, here's another one. It looked at productivity. So companies have long invested in training programs. And when you do a training program, the productivity inside that company is increasing 22.4%. When you combine training with coaching, you get an 88% productivity gain. That's tremendous. This comes from Public Personnel Management. 88%. Wow. And the bottom line is this: a training is going to give information. Coaching is asking the people, okay, what did you get out of this, and how are you using that information? What are you doing? How's that working? How are you adjusting, etc. So really supporting them in planning their application and implementation of what they learn. So it's exciting. All right. When somebody actually chooses which coach to hire, how do they choose? According to Harvard Business Review, there are two key things. One is experience in a similar setting. So here's what happens. You have people say, okay, can anyone be a coach? Yes, anyone can be a coach. Will anyone hire you? That depends. And so, for example, if somebody just graduated from high school, is the executive of a Fortune 100 company going to hire them as a coach? No. They want somebody who gets their world, who's got experience in it. Do they have to be a former executive? No. They have to have been in that space, in that world, and understand it. So that's what they're looking for when they're choosing who it's going to be. Now, beyond that, they want to know you have a clear methodology. That's where your training comes in. Do you actually have a process that makes sense? So let's talk about the coaching relationship in terms of how it works based on a model, and then we'll talk process. So the analogy here is going to be a staircase. Pretend for a minute you're going to build one. Well, when you build a staircase, what's the first thing you do? You put up a framework. You got to have a place to put the steps, right? So when you create your framework, if you use that as your analogy for coaching, what is the framework for a coach? Well, yes, training. What professional do you want to hire that hasn't had training? Of course this makes sense, because we do get that question, hey, do you really have to have training? Well, legally, no. Do you really want to put yourself out there as a professional without it? Think about it. Do you want to hire an accountant or a counselor or a teacher or an HR professional who's got zero training? So training makes a difference. Next in that, framework is the competency, and that's of course something you start developing through the training. And in conjunction with that, the code of ethics. Now, here's an interesting thought for you. Most of us come into coaching because we really want to help other people and we want to make a difference. So we come at it and we say, well, I am ethical. And I'm going to say, of course. And if you're like everybody else, we don't know what we don't know until we really dig into that code of ethics and what it means, because it's different. Ethics in coaching are different than ethics in other professions. There are some very essential components to that. So with that framework in place, now we're ready to build the staircase. In a coaching relationship, the first step is to have an agreement. In terms of creating that agreement, you start, of course, by having a conversation with somebody. Hey, what is coaching? What isn't it? How does this work? How are we going to function in this relationship? And then you have the written agreement that you're both signing that explains the parameters, defines the roles, talks about money and scheduling and whatever else is going to be addressed. So we have the agreement in place. And then our next step is for the coach to really understand the client. Who are they? How do they think? How do they process? How do they function? What are their priorities? What are their values? What do they want to work on? And then with that, the coach is going to adjust to the client, and you're going to develop rapport. Because when you care about your client, you adjust to your client, that's how you develop rapport with them. And with that, you're opening up communication where you're asking powerful questions, you're listening to what they're saying and what they're not saying. Your communication is clear, direct, and respectful. That in turn supports the next step of exploration, where the client is figuring out, hey, what are the opportunities, the possibilities, the options? Hey, what do they want to work on? They're figuring out, gee, what exactly is their goal? They're figuring out, hey, what are their barriers and how are they going to move past them? So you're exploring all of that, which supports them creating their strategy. Hey, how are they moving forward? And specifically, what steps are they taking for moving forward? So they create that strategy, and that in turn moves them toward that doorway called success, and success is in fact defined by the client. So that's our analogy for the coaching relationship. Now look at the coaching process itself. If you're going to coach somebody, how does this work? What happens? So the first thing is what we call an introductory session. Typically, this is before you actually have a coaching relationship. It's a chance for the client to check you out as a coach. Hey, do they like you? Do they like how you work and how you function? And you as a coach to say, hey, am I a good match for this client? Are we going to work well together? So they get to check out coach and the coaching relationship. So you're exploring that together. It's typically 20 to 30 minutes. Once you say, yeah, this works, we're moving forward, you sign your agreement, and then you go into what we call an opening session. And ideally in that opening session, it's a chance to explore the big picture. What does the client want? What's going on in all their different areas of their life? What's important to them? And get that big picture insight of what's important to them. And from there, your next coaching session is, how are you truly supporting the client so that they maintain their focus on what they're doing and fully engage in moving forward toward their own goals? With that in place, as an ongoing process for your coaching conversations, the client gets to prioritize what they want to work on, strategize how they're going to do it, develop specific action steps, and then as a coach, you're asking them about their progress, you're celebrating that along the way, and serving as their accountability partner. And this continues throughout your coaching relationship. The average coaching relationship lasts about 12 months, and as you complete it, what you want to do is have a conversation with the client. How are they going to maintain their success for the long term, continue building on it and growing for the long term, and solidifying their own habits? And you have what we call a closing session. Hey, what was accomplished in this relationship? What does that mean to the client? How are they continuing and moving forward? And of course, as a coach, even when we call it a closing session, we're also making sure we're keeping the door open so that if and when they want to come back, they know that we're available for them. So now you've seen that analogy of the coaching relationship, the process itself. Let's move into discussing certification. There are pros and there are cons. First off, we do get that question of how important is certification? So back to Harvard Business Review, a study they did. When somebody is hiring a coach, asked them, how important is certification? And by the way, this study was done several years ago, so these numbers are increasing. They said 29.2% of the time people say certification is very important when they're deciding who to hire. I have seen that continue to grow. I've seen it now where companies are doing RFPs for coaches and coaching services, and it's becoming a requirement more and more often. So certification is a big deal. Now, you do have some people that say, hey, it doesn't matter at all. And if you look at those numbers, those are pretty close. Where you're getting that is people who have referrals of a coach, and it's based on that referral. And then you've got everybody that's in between there, some value. They say, you know, it's a little bit important. Yeah, it's pretty important, a different range. Ultimately, when this study was done, over 70% were assigning some level of value to certification when they hire a coach. And as we said, this number continues to grow. So increasingly, it's becoming something they want and or require. So pros and cons of certification itself. Well, certification is like going to school, right? And just like anything we do in terms of going to school, it's a time and a money factor. It takes time to go to college, to get a certification, a professional designation, whatever it is, and it takes money to do that. And those are the big cons. If those two things are gone, then it becomes almost a no-brainer. Yeah, this is great stuff. It helps me. It helps me in everything I do. So it's the time and money factor. Now, on the pro side, in terms of individuals in the workplace, in a job, it is a career advancement opportunity. So let's give a couple of examples, and I think this will help with some of the questions that came in ahead of time. So some of you were asking and saying, okay, you know, what does this do for me in my job? So for example, if somebody is an HR professional, coaching is considered a sub-competency for what you do. If you are in training and development, member of ATD, for example, coaching is considered a core competency. You saw that it's an organizational development tool of choice. So people that are doing organizational development, people that are doing consulting and facilitation, training, HR, it's actually part of what you're doing. We also are seeing a lot of people that apply it in their leadership role. So they're not intending to be a professional coach. What they are intending to do is be a great leader in whatever role they do have with their career. And coaching skills are great leadership skills. So it really is an opportunity for them to advance their own career because of their skill set. Now on the business development side, yes, people take coaching classes and certification because they want to either add it to an existing business. So we see that a lot when people are consultants, project managers, etc., offering different services, they will pursue the coaching certification both in terms of application in the work they're already doing and in terms of adding an additional service to their menu, if you will, of what's available. So it's a business development opportunity that way. And then of course we have a lot of people, I love this term, they call it their after career. They've had a successful career, and instead of completely retiring, they want to do something, and coaching really speaks to them, and so they're pursuing it for that reason. So you'll have people that do coaching as a part-time business or as a full-time business in terms of really providing that focused service. So lots of opportunities there, and we're going to explore them further. First off, the reasons people choose certification at the Center for Coaching Certification, this is what we hear from students. Number one, they care about credibility. And a couple of you asked the question, how do you know if an organization's credible? That's a significant factor. So we will look at that in further detail. They also want to know they're going to get coaching tools. So of course, as you go through a training class, you're gaining tools, and what else is available to you after the fact. So for example, we have a coach login page with lots of tools available to graduates of the program. We also are very big on the ongoing support. So sometimes you go to school, you graduate, you're gone, you're done. We are big believers in being available and in supporting your success over the long term. So we have a lot that's available to you after the fact in terms of supporting your success. So a few quick examples in response to your question. Thank you for that. So number one, we publish a book every year. Well, that's support because it's fresh content every year, new perspectives, and it's also an opportunity for you to become a published author because the chapters in the book are written by graduates of the program. So it's a win-win-win all the way around in terms of developing yourself as a writer, building your credibility and being published, and then also access to all this great content from your colleagues focused on coaching. So it's great that way. We do things like free continuing ed, etc. So a lot of opportunities there, and we support creating opportunities for you. Professional development. So many of you have a job or a professional designation, for example, that requires your continuing education, ongoing development. So at the Center for Coaching Certification, the certificate, in addition to being approved by the International Coach Federation, it's also a CEU program, which means you can use it for your required continuing education, either at work or with a professional designation or both. And then, of course, the personal development side of it, because ultimately coaching skills are helpful at work, at play, and at home. And it's a huge growth opportunity for all of us. So let's go further into some of these details. We talked about pros and cons, and we talked about money. So let's look at that. In terms of how much time for the training, there are programs out there that are a couple hours. There are programs out there that take 10 years, think university level, etc. So there's a huge range. In keeping with what the International Coach Federation requires, we have the Certified Professional Coach Program, which is 30 hours, and then our Certified Master Coach Program, which is 35 hours. That gets you the hours required for membership, and for those of you pursuing the credential, we also work with you in terms of the mentor coaching, etc. So that's available to you. Now, location. There are classes available online. There are classes you travel. Depending on where you live, some of you are lucky and you live in an area where classes are offered. With the Center for Coaching Certification, we do both. So we do have classes where you can complete everything online, and we also offer the classes in cities around the country and inside of organizations when that's requested. In terms of cost, so when you look at a program that's a few hours online, you're going to look at that $400 range. I will share with you it's not going to be approved because the International Coach Federation, their minimum number of hours to even look at it is 30. So if it's fewer than that, chances are it's a great introduction, it's helpful insight and information, and if you're going to pursue coaching, you're going to have to go back and repeat those hours in an approved program. So letting you know on that one. Now, the university programs sometimes are approved, sometimes are not. So you want to check that out as well if you're looking at the at things like the International Coach Federation. The Center for Coaching Certification Programs, the Certified Professional Coach is $16.95 and the Certified Master Coach is $18.95. I will share one of the most common comments I get on that from students who graduate is they think the price is really low. And they are comparing that to others, and they're comparing that based on what they're receiving. And I think that's great. I really like that because this is a number that can work for you, and because of how we are set up with our business model, we can do it. So that's great. Now, when you look at a coach training program, wherever you look, I'm going to go back to you want it approved by the International Coach Federation. So both good and bad news on that one. You got 300 or 400 choices. So that's good because there's lots of choices, and it's tough because there's so many choices. So when you look at the programs themselves, the International Coach Federation has 11 core competencies. Make sure all 11 are being developed in the program. So the 11 competencies are sorted into 4 different groupings or categories, if you will. So the first group is setting the foundation. And within that are 2 core competencies. One is about following the ethical guidelines, living those standards, etc. And then the other is establishing the coaching agreement. So we talked about having that verbal conversation and then the written agreement itself. Then the next category is co-creating the relationship. So think about this and think about that staircase to success model. It's right in keeping. So trust and intimacy. How do you develop trust and intimacy? You develop rapport. And with that rapport, your client is going to trust you, which means you're going to have that open conversation and really discuss what's important and significant for them. And then, of course, as a coach, it's you being present to the client in the moment with them. Who are they? What's going on for them? And then your next category is communicating effectively, where you're actively listening to what they're saying. You're asking those powerful questions, and coaching questions are different than any other kind of question. And then, of course, the clear, direct, respectful language in terms of the communication. And our 4th category of competencies is facilitating learning and results. This includes creating awareness, which of course happens because you're asking questions and doing that exploration process, and then the client is designing their actions. This involves planning and goal setting, both for how we function in this coaching relationship and for where the client is going. And then, of course, accountability. Accountability in terms of celebrating progress and success, and accountability in terms of their follow-through as they move forward. So these competencies in whatever program, very, very important. All right, quality of training. So first off, the International Coach Federation, their approval of a coach training program tells you, okay, this has got the content here, and that's very, very important. Now, the International Association for Continuing Education and Training is a gold standard in terms of how training is designed and delivered. So the accreditation there does a couple of things. First off, it's that, hey, yeah, credibility as far as design and delivery of the program, and it's also, hey, this is a CEU program, which means for professional designations that you may have, this will meet that requirement. So most places accept CEUs, continuing education units, that are accredited by IACET. So that's pretty exciting as well. On top of that, to let you know, we also have been approved by the HR Certification Institute, where this is 30 hours of general credit for the professional coach, 35 for the master coach, so you've got that. And I'll give you another one that isn't even listed here. The Association of Image Consultants International has also approved our certified professional program for continuing ed. So you've got all kinds of accreditations and approvals that you're looking at here. I think one of one point that's pretty exciting is we are actually the only ICF approved program that is also accredited by IACET to offer those CEUs. So that's pretty exciting. Now, who takes the class? We see a lot of members from ATD and SHRM, a lot of people from those organizations. We see a lot of financial planners, business owners through NABO, consultants through AICI, ICF, because people want the credit hours or the continuing education hours because you can use it either way. IACET, people recognize what that is. We get a lot of mental health professionals that take the program, a lot of consultants, project managers, and bottom line, people that have a passion for empowering others. That's huge. Who actually benefits from coaching certification? You know, I got my personal bias here. I'm going to say everyone. I've had people say this should be required when you go to school, and I'm like, I agree, because coaching really is about how we interact with other people, how we communicate, etc. And there's benefit in every area, whether you're a leader, a trainer, educator, consultant, manager in HR, project management, service provider, business owners, there's benefit to that coach training. Let's dig in specifically. So we talked about career opportunities, and one of the things we mentioned is that if you're in HR or in talent development, it being a competency area. Let's go even further. Think about it from that leadership perspective. So first off, a couple of things, and you may have seen these or similar statistics. The Gallup poll's been around for a while. People quit because of their boss. They're not leaving the company, they're leaving their immediate supervisor or manager. In 2011, when the economy was down and tanked, think about it, 84% of people that had a job wanted to quit. They couldn't because they had to have the income. And if you look at it, this statistic is pretty close to what's holding true today. You've got up to, I've seen 70% actively looking for a different job. This is amazing. And it really is about what's happening with their interaction with leadership where they work, and most commonly immediate managers and supervisors. So what does that tell us? Well, I'm going to go back to whatever role you're in. Learning coaching skills is going to improve your effectiveness in what you do. And because of that, it's going to start impacting what's going on inside the company and in turn, your own career path. So it becomes an opportunity that way, whether it's a job that requests or requires coaching skills or it's a job that has leadership involved, it's an opportunity. On the personal skill development level, first off, think about it, communication skills, listening skills, and the irony around listening skills is most of us say, oh yeah, I'm a pretty good listener, and if you ask us, do you think other people listen well, most of us say, not so good. So there's a bit of a gap or a disconnect there. Also our language, being clear, being direct, and being respectful at the same time, that's definitely a learned skill. And then the questions, how we ask what we ask. It is also a people skill development opportunity, recognizing different personality styles, how they function because of their personality style or in conjunction with it, and then knowing how to flex to people based on who they are. Goal setting. Imagine this for yourself. What does it do for you when you have an effective process for creating change and motivating follow through, both on your personal goals and when you're supporting other people? So that's pretty exciting. On the business opportunity side, back to, okay, what are those possibilities? So let's look at the numbers. The ICF did a study. The hourly cost for a coach ranges from $100 to $3,500. Okay, so the $3,500, you're talking Oprah Winfrey and that kind of thing. Most of it's going to be in that 100 to 500 range where you see the median. When you have high-powered executive coaches, that's when you start moving up from the $500 range. If you're doing life or career coaching, that's generally in that $100 range. Business coaching, $200 to $400, executive coaching, $400 and up. So that gives you a ballpark in terms of how much coaches are paid. Now, here's another one for you. Out of every 29,000 people in the U.S. and Canada, where we have the highest concentration of coaches, there's only one coach for every 29,000. There's a lot of room for more coaches. So in terms of a business opportunity, whether it's an add-on service, part-time or full-time, yes, there is opportunity and room there. So it's a job opportunity and a business opportunity. Now let's look at the program itself. The Certified Professional Coach Program. How does it work? What happens? So first off, we start with a series of online classes. I want to give you something very important. So in this class, here's a key thing. You're not really sure who all's there and you can't hear other people. Unfortunately, we have to do it that way because there's too many people on the call to have everybody on live. You'd be getting all kinds of static and feedback and that kind of thing. When it's an actual class that we do, that's different because here's what happens. In an actual class, you do see the list of everybody who's here with you and you hear everybody. That means you ask questions, you answer questions, you engage in the conversation. We actually, in the first class, pretty early on, have everybody introducing themselves. So it's a lot of fun because you get to know each other. The first class is called About Coaching. And it's very similar in many ways to the conversation you have with someone prior to signing an agreement. Hey, what is coaching? What isn't coaching? How does it work? What are the roles? What are the parameters, etc.? So we have that conversation. And we take a look at the core competencies. It's you really looking at them for yourself. Hey, what's your level of skill? And you decide for yourself, and you decide where you really want to focus your attention in terms of developing your competency. Then we move into the class on ethics. We actually have a really good time with that one. So what we do is we say, okay, if this is the situation, how do you handle it? Hey, what does this mean to you? And so we discuss it as we go, and it's incredibly insightful. Then we move into a class called Understanding Your Client. We ask everybody to show up with a sense of humor, come ready to learn, yes, and also laugh, because it's a lot of fun. It's about recognizing different personalities, what's going on for people, and then talking about how to adjust based on those differences. Then we move into communication and really specific techniques in terms of how you listen in a coaching conversation, in terms of language, words that work and words that shut people down. And then we talk about questions, different types of questions, and how to formulate powerful questions. And then our fifth class, Focus and Motivation, really explores how do you develop rapport with your client? How do you make sure your questions are something easily understood and managed by the client? And how do you empower them? It's in conjunction with who they are. It's in conjunction with the language and how we say things. And then we also talk about specific thought processes behind goals that make a difference in terms of people's ultimate success. Now, with each of the classes that we do, you have homework. So we do 90 minutes in class. You're going to have a 90-minute homework assignment. The first couple classes, you'll do some research, and then you'll write a paper on it. And then the next couple of classes, you're going to practice the techniques we give you in class and write about what happens. The idea here is it really solidifies your learning. This is a training design element that gives you an opportunity to take what we covered in class and dig into it and apply it for yourself. And you do get credit. That's part of your class hours doing that homework. So we'll have specific questions for you to answer, and it's so fun. People come to class and say, wow, this is amazing. Here's what I did. Here's what happened. It was super exciting. So we really enjoy that. Then we move into the coaching practicum. Now, if it's an online class, it's 4 half days online, and if it's face-to-face, we do it in 2 full days. The coaching practicum is a chance you're partnered with classmates, and you're going to coach, you're going to be coached, and you're going to observe coaching. And of course, your trainer's right there answering questions. If you get stuck, how do you handle it? Giving you feedback on what you're doing well, what you might want to change, etc. So it's an amazing experience. Then at the end of the coaching practicum, we have a case study. It literally will walk through it with you, and where in your material do you have the answer? We'll discuss that, etc. And so while it serves as your final, it also serves as a fabulous review and an outline of the coaching process from an initial conversation all the way through. So it's a great tool and resource for you. After certification, on our coach login page, for those of you that want to do this as a business, there is a 90-minute recording on the business of coaching and a 90-minute recording on marketing yourself as a coach. And then on top of that, every month we do a Q&A call for free for all of our graduates, whatever questions you want to ask in this area. So it's a great opportunity to support you on an ongoing basis. We also have free continuing education. So maintaining a designation calls for 12 clock hours every 2 years. We actually schedule 24 clock hours every 2 years, and you can access our free continuing education. In addition to that, of course, we're going to accept anything through the International Coach Federation, anything coaching specific. And if it's on one of the 11 competencies, we'll accept that as well. So as long as it makes sense in terms of your coaching work, we're going to accept that. Now, after the Certified Professional Coach Program is the Certified Master Coach Program. One of you submitted this question, and we do hear this frequently. People say, okay, how much time between those two? And we say that's your choice. Some people like to continue their learning process and move straight from one into the next. Other people have time in between because they're managing schedule and budget, back to those con areas. So it's really up to you whether or not you move straight into the Master Coach Program. So first off, we do a webinar series there as well. The first one we do is called Group and Team Coaching. And the reason we do that first is because part of the Master Coach program is learning group and team coaching. And part of learning it is doing it. So by doing the class on group and team coaching first, what we're setting up is having you actually coach the group. So everybody who's in class will have a turn to be the coach for one of the group sessions, and then in the other group sessions you're participating in it. So it's great. We get to see all different ways of running a group coaching. Then we move into digging into each area of competency, getting specific do's and don'ts for each of those competencies, taking that discussion to the next level. So the competencies of ethics and agreements, we're going to look at the do's, at the don'ts, and talk about what that really means and how you apply it. So it's a great discussion. With coaching process, it's the competencies of trust and intimacy and coaching presence. Then with the class on people and communication, it's the listening, the clear direct language, and the powerful questioning. And then with the class on creating change with confidence, we're looking at creating awareness, planning and goal setting, developing your strategies, and then of course your accountability component. So all of the competencies, we go even further in terms of specific do this behavior, don't do this behavior. So it's fabulous insight. And then we have a sixth class called Time and Money Coaching, because bottom line, just like those are the big cons for coach training, for most people as they're moving toward goals, those are big barriers, or at the very least influencing factors. And they're also sensitive subjects for people. So it's a great conversation on specifics with time and money, yes, and also, hey, how do we handle some of these sensitive topics with people? Now, with the Master Coach program, your homework is split in half. So instead of the full report after class, you do part of it before and part after. You're looking at, hey, where am I at now? And then based on the conversation we have, where do I want to go with that? So we give you questions to respond to. And of course, what you want to do is draw on real examples because your learning is enhanced that way. The coaching practicum itself. So we do have the group sessions where you're going to coach the group and then be part of that. We talked about that. Then we also have individual coaching. And the way we do it in the Master Coach Program is very much like what happens in the real world. So first off, you get a chance to decide which classmates you want to interview. You'll all share bios together, and then you'll get a chance to interview 3 of your classmates, and then from there you're involved in choosing which of your classmates is going to be your coach. So here's what's great about that. You get to put yourself in the client's shoes. Hey, if I'm interviewing a coach, you know, what do I care about? What am I going to ask? That kind of thing. And then as a coach, if a client's interviewing you, how are you managing that? So it's a fabulous experience. For the actual coaching sessions, those are scheduled with the coach, the client, so you and a classmate, and then the trainer. And that's it. So you get lots of one-on-one attention with that, direct and immediate right there support. When you complete this piece of it, there's a final report, you choosing a coaching situation, whether it's from class or outside of class, and writing about that situation. And then you graduate. So that's our Master Coach Program. And whatever training you do, and of course we hope you're looking at ours, the recommendation to you is think about this. The more you put into it in terms of your time, your thinking, your effort, the more you're going to get out of it and really enhance your own skills. Okay, I did promise that I have something for you. I want to make sure I give you that. So everyone that's here, I'm going to give you a free 30-minute session, and you can use that however you want. If you want it to be a coaching session, great. We'll do a coaching session. You get to pick your topic, whatever you want to work on, etc., and we'll do that. If you want to use that to ask more questions, or you want to use it and really talk through, hey, what do you want to do and how do you want to do it? Great. It's your 30 minutes. You get to decide what you want out of it. Now, in terms of what happens next as far as coach training, at the Center for Coaching Certification, filling out the application is free. It's a great way to, check the boxes of, hey, this is what's required to complete this successfully. And then we also ask you to tell us about you and tell us about your interest in coaching. This is great because it gives the trainer a chance to really get to know you as somebody in the class and be prepared for being effective with you. When you know which class you want to take, you're going to reserve your place in that class and pay your registration. Now, as far as options, I had a couple of you asking that. On the Center for Coaching Certification website, where it says Certified Professional Coach, on the drop-down menu, you can go to the schedule for 2016 or the schedule for 2017. You can look by month by scrolling down or clicking on the month you want to look at, or you can look by location. So some people choose by location that's close to them to save on travel expense. Some people choose by schedule, because of what happens within their work world, etc. So pros and cons to either option. You get to look at it and pick what's going to work for you, and we're happy to answer questions about that. I do want to take a moment to say thank you, all of you, for being here. I appreciate your time, your participation. Definitely look forward to being of service. I do want to invite you, if you have additional questions, please take a moment and enter those into the question panel. Or if you want to come on live, raise your hand. I'm happy to do that. I'm reviewing the questions that were submitted ahead of time, and I believe we have effectively answered what you asked in advance. So hoping that you all have the information you want. I appreciate some of you are typing in the question panel and saying thank you, that it really did answer your question. So I appreciate that. Thank you to you as well. Do let us know how we can be of service as you move forward. Let us know what additional questions we can answer for you. If you call our 800 number, one of our team will get back to you. You just leave a message there. They'll get back to you and answer whatever questions you have. We take turns being on call and responding to that. And the good news is everybody that's responding to calls has actually completed the program. So they'll really know in terms of, hey, this is how it works, etc. So also, if you send an email, you can just email Coach Support at Center for Coaching Certification, and again, somebody on the team will get back to you. So very excited about that. Thank you again for your time and participation. I'm seeing many of you are jumping into other things you've got going, and I appreciate your comments. So thank you, everybody, and have a fabulous rest of your day.